All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Now, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We are Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. And it's kind of weird talking baseball on the day that it's literally 1 degree outside. It's painfully cold out. It's not like baseball is at the front of your mind right now, but nonetheless, I know we're all excited for the upcoming Reds season, and you could tell Reds season's getting closer, of course, when we're talking about the Reds Caravan, the Cincinnati Reds Caravan hitting the road coming up this weekend. It'll make its annual stop in Dayton at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force, and one of those on the panel that'll be in attendance coming up this weekend is the radio voice of the Reds, Tommy Thrall, and he's joining us now. Tommy, we appreciate your time. Thank you for being patient with us as we got all the camera stuff figured out, but we appreciate you giving us some time. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
We're good, but we're not the ones getting back from Puerto Rico. What was happening in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, it was kind of a nice time to get away. There was about when I left, I think there was about a foot of snow on the ground, so it was a pretty good time to get out of here and find some warm weather.
So you're going to be, and then you get back. Of course, you got to hit the road right away. You got the Caravan coming up. This is obviously one of the cool things that the Reds do in the offseason. We were just talking a few moments ago about Reds Fest and how cool and unique that is, and how no team in baseball does it better. But these are the two staples that the Reds do in the offseason that really kind of keep the fans engaged and locked in. Reds Fest in December, and then the Caravan here in January. But you're going to be, on the Caravan, kind of touring around a little bit with some other Reds members on the panel. But one of your stops this coming up weekend, Dayton at the Air Force Museum. How cool! That's always one of the most unique stops. Not just because I'm in Dayton, but I've always, every time I hear anybody talk about the Caravan, they say Dayton has the coolest stop just because of the wing that you're in with all the planes and all the cool stuff in the background.
It is. I almost feel bad saying it, but it's because there's so many great stops on the Caravan, right?
Yeah.
But for me personally, it's probably my favorite stop. And obviously the fans in Dayton are tremendous, but I'm a big aviation nerd. So when I got to go to the museum last year, it was the first time I'd been, and I got to see the planes and just see that hangar. It's incredible. And I still want to make it back up there just so I can spend some time. I'll spend a whole day up there easy. I mean, that place is that's like outside of baseball. Airplanes are my other passion. So it was really cool to go up there. It's a cool place to just really make a stop and get to hang out with the fans. And it's always a huge turnout, but the setting is just tremendous.
I brought up the Caravan, from 2 years ago. I remember there was the season where the Reds were expected. This was before Elly was called up and Matt McLain was called up. Like, this was really before we kind of got to know who these guys were and start to get excited about their futures. That there was that season where everyone was projecting the Reds to lose about 100 games, and that's always tough. I know that's tough for you. It's tough for the organization. How do you go in front of the fans and get excited and get them excited when it's going to be a rocky season? And I'll never forget that Caravan, because I walked in thinking, oh man, there's going to be barely anybody here, and there was over 400 or 500 fans just lined up, ready just to take in the Caravan. So that's what's cool about the Reds fan base is, yes, you want to provide a winner for them, no doubt, but like the loyalty and just the excitement for the organization, no matter what, that just shows the excitement of the fans, no doubt.
Yeah, it does. And the thing is, I grew up a long-suffering fan of a team that wasn't very good and perennially just terrible. In fact, far worse than the lean Reds years. And the one thing that I always remember is just how excited I was once opening day came, because it didn't matter how bad the team was supposed to be. Baseball season was back. And it's just, I don't know, for those of us that love the game, it's just so ingrained in us that it becomes part of the rhythm of your summer. And for better or for worse, it's baseball and you love it. And when your team does give you something to be excited about and cheer for, there's nothing better. But even when things are tough, there's always still something, it seems like, to get excited about. There's that winning streak that just gives you a little glimmer of hope. Maybe when you win 5 in a row in the middle of the summer, and even though it's been maybe a tough start, all of a sudden you start to see, okay, maybe this is the turnaround, or you have a strong last couple of months of the season, and it gives you a little bit of hope going into the next year. And then with the case of this Reds team, it's guys like Elly De La Cruz, Matt McLain. You start to see it with these guys, and even though he struggled last year after the suspension, we saw flashes of Noelvi Marte and how good he can be 2 years ago. And those guys always give you hope. And sometimes you have a crop of young players like that. Sometimes it's a big free agent signing in the offseason. But this team, there's certainly a lot of reason to be excited about coming into this year.
Tommy Thrall, radio voice of the Reds, hanging out with us. And Tommy, we kind of joked that, hey, we've been waiting for the Reds to make some noise in October for quite some time. Well, they did that. They made a lot of noise this past October, just not, in a different way. They announced the hiring of Terry Francona. And, it's interesting when the news was announced of David Bell being let go with just a handful of games left. I wasn't a fan of that unless they had a plan in place. And maybe this was the plan that was in place all along, but the build up to the announcement of Terry Francona, we had Marty Brennaman, we had so many Reds interviews, during that coaching search or managerial search. And it was one of those, like, do we really get excited about the possibility of it being Terry Francona? Like, let's not get our hopes up. What's the chances that the Reds get Terry Francona? And I'll never forget that evening when it was announced that Terry Francona was announced as the next manager of the Reds. That just kind of felt pretty surreal. It doesn't feel like something that happens for the Reds too often. That was a home run get, no pun intended. What was your initial reaction? The biggest news of the offseason, and even though it was still in the technically October of last season, Terry Francona, the manager of the Cincinnati Reds, I know you've had a chance to interact with him a bit, on the Reds Hot Stove League show and other programs like that. But that was a huge, huge get for the Cincinnati Reds.
I heard from Tom Hamilton right away, and he goes, "You are in for a treat." He goes, "You are absolutely going to love him." And we've had him on the hot stove twice. Once on the phone, the other time was in person. And you just get the sense that you could sit there and talk baseball with him for hours, and he loves every second of it. And he understands the game, obviously. But what he understands about managing is the importance of managing people. And it's not just managing people, it's having that tough conversation with somebody to avoid a bigger problem down the stretch. Something he said that really resonated with me, and I've heard great leaders say it. Deal with a problem now. If you've got a good enough rapport with whoever it is, whether it's an employee or in this case it's one of your players, deal with it now. You'd rather them be mad at you for a day or two and then get over it down the road, because they will. If they've got that respect for you, and players, you talk to anybody that's played for them, they all have that respect for them. They do get over it, and you move on, and the problem's been resolved. He understands that as well as anybody, and I think that's part of what makes him such a good leader. And so that's why I'm excited to see what he can do for this team. The Reds have made some moves, and I don't think they're small moves. I think the Gavin Lux deal makes the lineup better. I think Brady Singer gives a little more stability to the rotation. And look, I get it. This rotation's been banged up. They need to stay healthy, but you're going to have injuries that are going to happen. A guy like Brady Singer gives you that stability. He can help weather the storm when maybe somebody goes down, and it makes the bullpen better because somebody's going to end up in the bullpen that maybe has been starting games for this team before. So these are things that make the team better. But when you have a manager like Terry Francona, there are few managers out there that I truly believe can make a huge difference in a team and get a few extra wins. He's that guy. And I said it on the hot stove. It's like adding a 10-win player. I mean, this is a huge get for the Reds. When I first heard it, we kind of had heard maybe that the Reds would be going after him. But like you, I don't know if I really believed that it had enough legs to happen. And then I heard the news. I texted Brad and Nick immediately. I said, "Is this real?" They're like, "Oh yeah." And so it was pretty cool. Then I texted Cowboy, and it's cool to be excited about something like this.
Do you think, and I've been a believer that, when David Bell got fired, I thought they were going to get a guy like Skip Schumacher, and this is no knock on Skip Schumacher, but I do think there are managers in baseball that do follow, a script per se. They've got what they can say. They follow analytics to a T, and you don't really feel like the manager is a part of the team. This was the one exception, and I was so excited to see it because again, like you, I didn't really believe that this was possible. Do you think fans are going to see a difference on the field immediately this season, I should say, with Terry Francona at the helm?
I don't know that you'll see a huge difference, excuse me, in things like the decisions that he makes. Look, anybody that's involved in this game, I don't care if they were managing the game 50 years ago. The analytics, we have analytics, right?
Yep.
But what the analytics are is they're just quantifying what the good managers have always already known. They've already had scouting reports. Maybe they weren't quite as detailed. Maybe they didn't quantify everything quite as much. But, if a guy was a pole hitter, a manager knew that from the beginning, like all the way back. If you had a certain way you were going to attack a guy, they knew that because the scouting reports, the feel has always been there. We can just quantify it a lot better now. So because of that, Tito gets all the information. He understands it, but he also knows the gut side of it. And he's not a guy. He's got enough dirt in his spikes now to where he can go on gut and not have to worry about his job if it doesn't work out. A lot of young managers, they kind of have to go by the book because that's how you can explain the move. And if it doesn't work out, you can say, well, look, the numbers said this is what we had to do there. And if you don't do that and you're an unproven manager and it doesn't work out, now you've got to answer for that. And I think in some cases, guys worry about their job. If the move they make, if they roll the dice and it doesn't work out, they go against the numbers. Yeah. So I think those are all things to keep in mind. But overall, I don't know that you'll notice a huge difference. I think he'll handle the bullpen really well. So you might see a little bit of a difference with the way he handles the pitching staff. But this is just a guy that knows what he's doing. He knows how to manage the game. And the numbers are still going to be there. He's still going to use them when he needs to.
You mentioned some of the moves the Reds have made, and the roster has improved, no doubt, but you're still counting on the young guys, the young core, per se, to be the biggest role of this team heading into the 2025 season. Besides Elly De La Cruz, I'll take him off. Which guy will step up the most this season? And again, we didn't really get to see a ton of CES last year. Matt McLain, not at all last year. Do you think one of those two guys will have the biggest jump, per se, from the last time we've seen them?
Well, Matt McLain, I think, is the obvious one. I think the thing with Matt, he's just got to stay healthy. I think what we've seen from him is that he is probably this team's best player when he's healthy. The guy that I think you're going to see a huge jump from this year is Spencer Steer. He struggled a little bit last year. Yeah. You look at some of the ancillary numbers, and for a down year, he still had a pretty good year. I just think he's too good of a hitter to hit the way he did last year. I think he'll kind of get that figured out. I think this will be a big season for him. Another guy to keep an eye on, and I think he has a chance to be the biggest difference maker for this team, is Noelvi Marte. I still believe. Now, look, he's got to prove it. He might start the year in AAA, but if that happens and he plays his way back to this big league team, I look at him as the type of guy that could go off. He is a highly talented player. And I really think if this team's, I don't think they need him to be great, but if he comes back and plays really well, I think this team is going to be really good. I think there's enough other pieces there. If Jeimer Candelario hopefully has made some corrections to his swing. Guys have talked about him in the offseason that he's found some things to tweak, and maybe he's going to get back to a little closer to who he was expected to be when the Reds signed him. You might be able, and with the addition of a guy like Gavin Lux, you might be able to still get by even without the production that you hoped for last year of Noelvi Marte when he came back. But if you get that, boy, he makes this lineup awfully dangerous. So he's a guy that I'm kind of excited to see. Now it's spring training is going to tell us kind of a lot with him. If he comes back in really good shape, that's a really good sign. And then kind of keep an eye on his work ethic during the spring and see how he looks. But he's kind of one of those guys that I'll be keying in on and to see if he's made the progress that I know we all hope he's going to make coming into this year.
Nick Krall said at the beginning of the offseason that signing a free agent bat in the outfield was one of the, I guess, one of the things that had to be on the checklist. It hasn't been checked off yet. And with this new TV deal that the Reds just signed yesterday to stay with FanDuel Sports, or the formerly of Bally Sports, do you think that we're going to see that at some point this offseason? A lot of Reds fans out there thinking that we're done. I think Nick Krall said the wiggle room thing on Reds Hot Stove League, and we're trying to talk ourselves into one more move. Do you think that there's one more move left in the tank?
I think there is. I don't know that it'll be a big free agent splash.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind. Nick is really good at finding a bargain, I guess, for lack of a better term. He figures out a way to find guys that are ready to have a bounce back year or kind of give you some sneaky production. And I look at a guy like Santiago Espinal. I think that was a great get for the Reds last year. It might be a move like that kind of flies in under the radar, but can still be a pretty productive move for this team. I think it'll probably be more of a trade than a free agent signing if I had to bet, but never know. I mean, like you said, hopefully this TV deal frees up a little bit of money, and maybe they do have some to spend. But I think if I were a betting man, I would probably expect it to be more in terms of a trade, more so than a big splash free agent.
I hate to ask you to speculate, but as we've seen with the bigger clubs in Major League Baseball, like the Dodgers, a premium star shortstop in this league is going to get a lot of money. Do you think that there's a possibility that the Reds sign Elly De La Cruz, whether it be this year, next year? Do you think there will be a discussion? I imagine those discussions are happening now and probably every day. But do you think soon we could perhaps eventually see some urgency on we need to sign this guy before he becomes too good? I mean, he's already unbelievable, but I worry as a fan of a small market team that once this guy wins an MVP award, he steals 75 bases, hits 35 home runs, that the dollar amount's going to be too much. Do you think that there will be a chance the Reds sign Elly De La Cruz in the near future?
Sure, if you can loan him $1 billion, I think there's a great chance they could do it. Yeah, go ahead,
Tommy. We can defer it. We'll pay you $1 billion in 2075.
Absolutely, yeah, perfect. You know what? I think I think we all want to see that happen, and I'm sure there's nobody that wants to see it happen more than Nick Krall. If something happens in the game to where the economic situation changed drastically between now and Elly's free agency, then there's a chance. I mean, realistically, I don't necessarily see it happening. And maybe I'll be wrong. I hope that I am, but given who his agent is and how his agent operates, it's going to be tough. The one thing that I think we all have to do, and trust me, I do it too. Watching this guy, he's a legend in the making, and you just kind of have to appreciate every day that you get to watch him in a Reds uniform. It's true of every player, regardless of whether they spend their whole career with a team or not. At some point, it all comes to an end. So you just kind of have to appreciate it. But here's the thing about a guy like Elly that I think is intriguing. He is one of these players, and I know Juan Soto signed that mega deal, but to me, if you give me the choice to buy a ticket to go watch Elly or Juan Soto, I'm going to go pay to watch Elly De La Cruz, because I know that there is a very high probability that he is going to do something that night on the field that I've never seen before, and he does it repeatedly. He's unbelievable. He is the most electric player I think I have seen. 40 years old. I've been watching baseball my whole life. I can't remember somebody that I've seen that's as electric and as exciting as he is. He's incredible. So yeah, I hope the Reds find a way to do it. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm glad that's not my decision. And I'm also glad that it's not my wallet that the money would come out of.
Yeah. I have one last question before I throw it back to Kinner. I was a member of the Reds broadcast team, the Reds radio broadcast team, for I don't know how many weeks of that 2023 season. I had to play all the bumpers. Let me ask you this, Tommy. Do you think we're going to get a change in the bumpers at some point this season? That's my biggest goal, because I love listening to My Humps and Take Me to the Candy Shop. Those are my two favorite songs maybe of all time. But I want one little, I want just one updated one. Can we get one updated one?
Sure. Maybe we can drop in Post Malone. He's got some new stuff out. Why don't we drop some of that in there? Hey, if I were in charge of that, I could do that. But that's above my pay grade.
I'll text Yid. That's who I'm going to text. I'll text Yid or Dave Keaton, the broadcast sheriff, and we'll get on this, because somebody's got to get it done. We got to update you and the Cowboy. You guys got to have the best up-to-date music in this world. Maybe the soundtrack of Wicked. That's hot now.
I'll drop a note in the suggestion box outside Yid's office.
All right, that's it. Justin, take it back.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, radio voice of the Reds, Tommy Thrall, hanging out with us. The Reds Caravan going to be making a stop in Dayton this coming up Saturday. National Museum of the United States Air Force, always one of the cooler stops for the Caravan, and we're lucky to have that here in Dayton. Of course, Tommy, it's funny because every time we have, whether it's anyone from the TV side or the radio side, the Reds always remind me, hey, no gotcha radio, all that, but how uncomfortable is that when you're up on the panel, when sometimes you might have a member of the Castellinis, you'll have Brad Meter, you'll have Nick Kroll. What's some of the stranger, uncomfortable questions? Do fans put you on the spot to say something when you know that they're sitting right next to you? How tough is that when you're put in that spot? That's always for me when I'm at those Caravan spots and some fans come through and ask questions. I'm always like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you navigate through that. But what are some of the more uncomfortable things that happen when you're at these Caravans or Reds Fest when you have to answer some of these questions with the owners or team personnel sitting right there?
Yeah, it's a lot of times people aren't quite as brave in person as they are maybe behind a keyboard on Twitter. So it doesn't ever get too terribly uncomfortable. There were times that people would ask about the fate of the manager on the last couple of years with maybe Nick Kroll or somebody from the front office there. But people typically don't ask questions about spending a whole lot of money. If somebody from the ownership side is sitting there, maybe they will, and usually you let them answer. But it's kind of fun to hear the questions. Everybody that's there is ready for them. Everybody that's on the panel is a professional. They can usually navigate those waters pretty good, and I think for the most part, the questions that get asked are fair. So it gives usually whoever's on the panel a chance to kind of address it directly from their side of things. And I think it gives the fan, that's the best part about it, is it gives the fans a chance to hear it straight from the source. And, they're genuine, they're honest answers. And that's why the Caravan exists. So we can connect with fans on a personal level and they can hear the answers to maybe tough questions that they've got and maybe kind of hear some insight and look at things through a different lens that maybe they didn't look at before.
Well, the good news is you don't have to answer any fire the manager questions for quite some time.
No, I think we're good on that one for a while.
All right, radio voice of the Reds, Tommy Thrall, awesome enough to give us some time. Tommy, you're the best. Thank you. We appreciate the time today.
All right, appreciate it, boys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.